All right, today we're putting on our detective hats and going deep into the world of financial audits. We're going to peel back the curtain and see exactly how auditors, the accountants who check the other accountants, figure out if a company's sales numbers are the real deal. So, picture this. A company comes out and proudly announces, "We made $1 billion in sales." I mean, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? But for an auditor, that number isn't a fact. It's a claim. Their entire job is to dig in and figure out how much of that billion-dollar story is legit and how much might just be, well, creative writing. This is exactly where our investigation kicks off. First things first. If you want to find a financial lie, you've got to understand how companies can lie in the first place. And believe me, in the world of accounting, there are some classic, almost time-honored tricks for pumping up those sales numbers, usually to hit a big target or make the stock price look good. So our auditor detective is on the lookout for a few usual suspects. You've got things like channel stuffing. That's where a company basically forces way more product onto its distributors than they can ever hope to sell, just so they can book the revenue right now. Or how about bill and hold sales? This is where a company gets paid for products that are, get this, still sitting in their own warehouse. Then you've got these sneaky side agreements that secretly change the terms of a sale after it's been recorded. And of course, the murky world of related party transactions with companies that are, let's just say, a little too close for comfort. These are the kinds of red flags they're trained to hunt down. Now, a smart detective doesn't just start knocking down random doors, right? They have a strategy. They figure out where the risk is. And auditors? They're exactly the same. They don't check every single sale out of millions. No way. Instead, they create a game plan to focus all their energy where the numbers are most likely to be fishy. So the big question is, how on earth do they know where to even start looking? I mean, where might the financial bodies be buried? It all starts with something called a risk assessment. Basically, they profile the company to get a sense of how likely it is to be hiding something in the first place. Auditors are trained to look for specific clues, what they call inherent risk. For example, is the company in a ridiculously competitive industry where everyone's just desperate to look good? Are their sales contracts super complicated with all sorts of weird terms? Or, and this is a big one, did they have mistakes in last year's audit? Every yes to questions like these is like putting another pin on a crime map, pointing straight to a potential hotspot. Okay, so all these clues help the auditor build a clear risk profile. A high-risk company, one with those complex sales and a history of problems, is going to get a really intense, skeptical audit. But a low-risk company, simple sales, stable industry, clean record, well, the auditor can be a little more relaxed. This initial assessment literally shapes the entire investigation from here on out. All right, so once the auditor has their game plan, it's time to follow the money. And I mean that literally. This part of the job is all about tracing the life of a sale, from the second a customer places an order, all the way to the moment that cash finally hits the bank. Every single step in that process should leave behind a trail of evidence. And this is what the typical journey of a single sale looks like. First, an order comes in, then their credit gets checked, the product gets shipped out, an invoice is sent, and finally, the cash is collected. Now, it sounds pretty simple, but for an auditor, each and every one of those steps is a checkpoint that absolutely needs to be verified. And how exactly do they verify it? With documents. This is the all-important paper trail. The auditor is going to want to see the original customer order. They'll need proof that the item was actually shipped. That's a document called the bill of lading. They'll check the official sales invoice, and they'll look for the remittance advice that came in with the payment. If any piece of that puzzle is missing, that's a major, major red flag. A really crucial piece of this whole puzzle is making sure no single person controls too much of the process. It's a key control called segregation of duties. Think about it. You can't have the person who approves a sale also be the person who ships the goods and also be the person who records the cash. It's like the slide says, you never let one person be the witness, judge, and jury. It's just common sense, right? It prevents one person from creating a totally fake sale and then covering their own tracks. Following the paper trail inside the company is great, but now we're getting to the real climax of the investigation. The auditor has to go out and gather their own hard evidence to see if the company's story and its numbers actually hold up under pressure. Auditors basically attack this from two angles. First, they test the company's internal defenses, their internal controls, like that segregation of duties we just talked about. Basically, are the locks on the doors even working? And second, they perform what are called substantive tests. This is where they kind of ignore the system for a minute and just test the cold, hard numbers themselves to see if they add up. But this raises the million-dollar question, doesn't it? What if the company is just faking all of its internal documents? I mean, what if the shipping logs are fake? What if the sales orders are for customers that don't even exist? How could an auditor possibly get evidence that isn't being controlled by the very company they're investigating? Well, the answer is one of an auditor's most powerful tools. It's called a confirmation. Instead of asking the company if a sale is real, the auditor goes straight to the source. They literally contact the customer directly and ask them to confirm, in writing, hey, do you really owe this company this much money? It is the ultimate independent third-party proof. Now, these confirmations come in two main flavors. A positive confirmation asks the customer to reply no matter what, whether the amount is right or wrong. This is the strongest possible evidence you can get. Then there's the negative confirmation, which is a little bit weaker. It asks the customer to reply only if the number is wrong. So in that case, no news is assumed to be good news. But what happens if the customer just ignores the letter? Throws it in the trash? The auditor doesn't just give up. They have backup procedures or alternative procedures. They'll look for proof that the customer paid the bill after the end of the year, or they'll go back and re-examine that internal paper trail, like the shipping documents, but this time with an even more skeptical eye. Okay, the fieldwork is done. All the evidence has been collected. Now comes the moment of truth. The auditor has to weigh everything they've found and make a final judgment call. Are the company's revenue numbers clean enough to get a passing grade? Here's something important to remember. Auditing isn't about finding every single penny of error. It's about making sure the financial statements aren't materially misstated. That just means the errors aren't big enough to actually mislead someone who's reading them. So before the audit even starts, the auditor sets a threshold, a line in the sand called tolerable misstatement. It's basically their acceptable margin of error. So the final decision really boils down to a simple comparison. The auditor adds up all the errors they found. If the total amount of misstatement is less than their tolerable misstatement level, the account gets a green light. It's considered fairly stated. But if the errors they found add up to more than that threshold, it's a big red flag. The account is considered misstated. And if those errors are too high, the auditor goes to management and tells them they need to correct the financial statements. And this isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement. If management refuses to make the changes, things can get really serious, potentially leading to a dreaded negative audit opinion that could absolutely crater a company's stock price. Which brings us to our final thought. An audit provides what's called reasonable assurance, not absolute certainty. It's designed to catch the big material lies, not every single tiny error. So after all these checks and balances, could a company's numbers still be wrong? The answer is yes. Auditing reduces the risk of financial lies, but it can never, ever eliminate it entirely. Definitely something to think about the next time you're looking at a company's financial report.